7:08, so I think it'd be great to get started. We have a checklist that thankfully has been provided by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns to help us out with this, which is a new experience for us all. So I'd like to just make sure the first thing that everybody can hear me. So if there is any problem hearing me or with my image or anything like that, could you please let me know? And the ways to let me know, and this would be helpful for the meeting as well, is you can either just go ahead and unmute yourself. You should have the ability to unmute yourself so that you can just speak right into the meeting. I don't think we have too many people for that to be a problem, but you can also, if you go to the right-hand side, is there an option to raise hand somewhere? Okay, so I see some nods. So if you want to click yep, okay, I see Mary R tried that out. Great. So if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand in that way, or to type something into the chat box. And I see Matt Patterson raising his hand. So try unmuting yourself, Matt, and then go ahead and comment.
I already did unmute myself, but you muted everybody else back when you were talking to John, and it looks like they're still all muted.
Okay, so I will unmute all.
There you go.
But I think that, oh no, it didn't. Okay, so
that worked for those who want to be unmuted. Yep.
Okay, so at this point, you should be able to unmute yourself if you choose to. The reason that people have it muted, though, is because if you're not speaking, it can create background noise and make it more difficult to hear the speaker. Okay. So, and once we get going, I'm going to turn this over to John Ulrich, the moderator of the meeting, so that I can try to keep more of an eye on the side to see if people are raising their hand and doing that. But I do need to read a legal introduction here, which states that as the chair of the village trustees, I am finding that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6 of his Executive Order 01-20 and Act 92 that the legislature did pass, that this public body is authorized to meet electronically. And so in accordance with that Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting via this video conference. And we are using Zoom for the remote meeting, and all the members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting and throughout the meeting through this platform. And the public has the contemporaneous ability to listen and, if desired, participate by the options that I mentioned before. So we have provided public notice and instructions, and I'm also going to try to share a document with you with the instructions that I'm giving so that you could have that document. And we're also, the meeting agenda and information was posted on in the Bennington banner as well as on Front Porch Forum, and I believe it may have been on the Fund for North Bennington website as well. I see a nod. Thank you. So if anybody has a problem with, so here's the tricky thing that you don't think about when you do this, is that if somebody has a problem with the application, then how are you supposed to get a hold of me to let me know that there's a problem? So if anybody does have a problem with communication or gets kicked off or something and can't get kicked and can't get back on, my home telephone number and I believe my cell phone number as well are available online. And please just either call me or send me a text message or or call your cell phone, or any of the board members that are here in the meeting and we'll try to resolve that issue before we take action. And if there is a need to continue the meeting, we will do that to a time and a place certain and hopefully under better circumstances. So please note that all votes taken during the meeting that are not unanimous will have to be done by roll call vote. And that is also part of Act 92. So unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do a ballot vote via this meeting. So if there's not a unanimous vote, we just go down the list of everyone in attendance to see how we vote. And it does not, it seems like that would be, that's going to be okay with the number of people that we have. Okay, so I'll ask the clerk, Lori, do you have the attendance, or would you like to for there to be a roll call at the beginning to make sure that we know everybody in attendance?
I have everyone listed.
Okay, great. So I will then turn the meeting over to John Ulrich, the moderator, to begin the meeting. And I will try to post the informational handout in the chat bar to see if people can access that. And I will also try to keep an eye on that in case people have questions. And I do see a hand raised. Yes, Tara, go ahead.
John, can we make sure that everyone is muted so that we don't have background noises when people are talking?
Sure.
There are about 5 or 6 people that still aren't muted.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I can do. I think we're pretty good there. If it becomes a problem, I can just mute Mr. Crabtree unless he objects. And then, yeah, okay. I think we're good now.
Okay, are we ready to begin? Okay. Lori, normally you read the warning for the audience. Would you like to do that tonight?
Would
Lori?
you like me to do that?
Certainly, that would be good.
Warning for the annual village meeting. And now I'm going to read the original warning. The legal voters of the village of North Bennington in the town of Bennington in the state of Vermont are hereby notified and warned to meet at the village school of North Bennington in said village on Tuesday, March 17th, 2020 at 7:30 in the afternoon to transact the following business. We did meet that evening. The meeting there was a motion to postpone that meeting until April 7th. On April 7th, there was a motion to and a second to postpone that meeting until May 12th. And here we are. Number 1, to hear and dispose of the reports of the village officers for the year. Number 2, to see what sum the village will vote to cover appropriations made at this meeting and for the current and incidental expenses, or authorize the trustees to borrow the necessary funds for that purpose. Authorize the trustees to spend unanticipated revenue, and also authorize the trustees to set the tax rate upon completion of the grand list. Number 3, to elect a moderator, clerk, treasurer, collector of taxes, and 3 auditors for the ensuing year. 2 trustees for 3 years, and 1 trustee for 1 year to fill the remaining term currently held by Mark Boudreau. Number 4, shall the village of North Bennington appropriate an increase in funding in the amount of $2,000 to Parent Recreations for the purpose of general operating expenses? Number 5, shall the village of North Bennington appropriate funding of $500 to the Bennington County Choral Society? Number 6, shall the village of North Bennington set the 2020-2021 property tax due date for November 10th, 2020? Number 7, shall the Village of North Bennington adopt the Climate Solutions Resolution for the state of Vermont? And number 8, to discuss any other business found proper when met. Laureen Elwell, Village of North Bennington, January 2020.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, so we'll go to item number 1, which is to hear and dispose of the reports of the village office just the year. If you have a copy of the annual report, the reports are all within. So what we would do is if you have particular questions, you can address the board and we will take care of those. So on that first item. Are there any questions?
Hello? Hi. Hi, all.
Yeah, any questions regarding the the items and reports within the village officer's report, in the annual report? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to accept as presented.
I so move.
There's a motion to accept the reports as presented. Is there a second? And a second, Alyssa has a second? Okay. John, should we just say if there's anyone, I mean, again, this is not really a voice vote. Would it be better for us to just say if there's anyone in objection? Is that how you wanted to go, John?
Yes, I think it's permissible for us to say, to ask if there is objection. And again, the options for response would be you can go ahead and unmute yourself and say
Okay.
that you'd like to either speak in opposition, or you could also just ask that there be a roll call vote as opposed to the motion passing by unanimous consent. So
Okay.
those would be your two options.
Okay, so is there any objection to the motion being passed as presented? Anyone have an objection? Okay, so if not, then it sounds as if we've passed. Does that sound right, John?
Yes.
You see no objections. Okay. So let's go to the second item, which basically is having to look at the set the tax rate. And if you have your annual report, okay, the numbers are presented, and on page 9, it gives the actual proposed budget. So are there any questions regarding the proposed budget and setting the tax rate? Are there any questions or discussion? So the floor is open for any questions or discussions regarding that. Any questions?
I can just speak to it briefly, which is that, so with the reports, at least as far as the trustees reports and the budget, last year we completed a number of infrastructure projects. We paved basically from the top of the hill on West Street all the way out to the village line, and we also did some paving on Royal Street and Ace's Way, and Susan Taylor. That's pretty much the limit of our project budget in any given year. That was actually more like a year and a half or 2 years worth of projects. So last year was a big year. This year we do not anticipate that kind of spending, so it would just be routine maintenance and obviously being prepared for something were it to come up. The beginning of what would normally be the busy season for the highway department is obviously not that right now because of the governor's order. We're not permitted to do any major construction or paving or any type of project. We're really confined to just the very basic, the most essential maintenance tasks. So I'm not sure what that means for the budget, but hopefully it would mean less spending, I would assume. But then there's unanticipated expenses that come because we have to do things like park closures and things like that. So, but I really do think that everybody is, well, I'll talk about how much I appreciate you all during this time, but it's I think we're doing very well given the circumstances right now, and it's pretty much as normal as could be expected under these circumstances.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding the budget and appropriations? Okay, well, if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the authorization to set the tax rate upon the completion of the grand list. Is there a motion? Yeah, a motion to accept item 2.
So moved.
Okay, so moved and by Mr. Howe. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Thank you, Rob. Okay, so as we did with the first step, if there's anyone in objection to this motion, which has been seconded, please indicate. Again, if there's any objection, please indicate your objection. If not, we'll assume that it's being passed by unanimous vote. No objections. Okay, does that sound okay, John? Okay, so let's move.
I see no objections. Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll go to the offices. This is the third article where we need to go through and elect a moderator, the clerk, the collector of taxes, and the 2 trustees for 3 years, and then one to fill out the remaining term, a year for Mark. So normally we'll go one of these officers at a time. The first one is the moderator. So the floor is open for any nominations for moderator. Any nominations for moderator?
I would nominate John Ulrich.
Okay. I'll take that on. Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other nominations? Okay, this should go rather quickly. Okay, well, there's no more nominations, so I guess, are there any well, let's see. Well, the floor can be
I'll
closed.
cast one. The clerk will cast one ballot.
Thank you, Lori.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll go on to the next item. Okay, the next one, there are 2, the clerk. Okay, currently Lori's been our clerk for quite a while, and there are nominations for clerk.
I'll nominate Lori.
Thank you. And a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Rob. Okay. Are there any more nominations? Again, are there any other nominations for clerk? Okay. All right. Okay, if not, then Lori, you can't vote for yourself, but we would, I don't know how we go about this legally, but.
Can I cast a ballot for her?
Thank you, Tara. There we go. We'll count that. Okay. Okay, now the next is the treasurer. Okay, Mary, you're currently our treasurer. I'll open floor for nominations for treasurer. Okay, Mary,
I nominate Mary Rogers.
thank you. And then there's a second. Just someone can go show me with your hand if you wish, or just quick thank you. And Ray Molino, thank you, Ray. A second, Mary Rogers. Okay, are there any other nominations? Again, I'll say that. Are there any other nominations? Okay, if there are no other nominations, Lori, as the clerk, could you please cast a vote for Mary? Thank you, Lori. Okay. This is rather good. Now, collector taxes. Okay. Mary, are you holding that role as well? Okay, so we'll open the floor for nominations. It's worked very well with Mary being the collector of taxes. Is there no nomination? Thank you. There's a nomination for Mary as collector of taxes and Ray, a second. Thank you again. Any other nominations?
Excuse me, I didn't catch the nomination. I caught the second, but not the nomination.
Okay,
The name of the person.
Mark Rogers.
Mark
Okay.
Rogers.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, and it's been seconded by Ray. Do we have any other nominations? I'll ask one more time, okay? Okay, Lori, there have been no other nominations. Would you be casting, thank you, a vote for Mary Rogers? Thank you, Mary. Okay, now, this is the one that always kind of gets me, the three auditors. John, how do we go about that again? I mean, every year we bring it up and I always forget.
So if I'm not mistaken, the last time that I looked at the statute, it said that a village or a municipality can get rid of the auditor position if they choose to.
Right?
That's not the, well, every municipality should have an audit of one kind or another, okay? And if a municipality has a professional audit every single year, then they say, well, you know, that this is really just a pro forma position and that you don't really need to continue with that. But if you don't have an audit every year, then they say that that does serve an important purpose, and they're not necessarily encouraging you to do away with it, but by law you can do away with it. That said, if the positions exist and no one applies to be them or asks to be nominated, you're not going to get in trouble for some reason. You know, you're not going to get in trouble for that, but you have to you should be auditing in some way anyways. Now, the Village of North Bennington has decided to use a professional audit service. We've had our audit done for Mary, can you correct me if I'm wrong, 2018?
It was 2016 and we are currently doing 2019. So we are doing every 3 years.
Okay. So we're on a regular schedule of audit by Love, Cody and Company. We have had 2016 come back to us, but it was just after this report was printed. So please contact anybody on the board if you'd like to have a copy of the audit. And we will post that as well, I would say. But if somebody wants to be an auditor, it's a position that's available. Traditionally, we have not been able to fill that role, but and I think that's okay, especially since we're having a professional audit done. But
Mary?
That's as far as I know.
Okay, Mary, yeah.
Further, we need 3. 1 won't do. We need 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, John, you said that the year 2019, that particular year is being audited as well?
Yes.
Okay.
It's current that we've engaged them to do 2019, and it's in the process right now.
Okay. All right. So I'll open the floor for any, well, we'd have to have 3, I guess. And if not, then we'll just continue as we have without those positions filled. Are there, in this case, I guess we would need 3 nominations. So are there any nominations for auditors? Okay. All right, well, if not, then I guess we will just continue on as we are. And we do have an audit happening currently, about to be reported, and then the year 2019 is, I guess, being done as well. So, okay. Well, then I guess we'll go on to the next positions, okay? We have 2 trustee positions. Let me look at the book here. So the terms expiring this year, Tara and Matthew, their positions. So we have 2 positions open. So these are 3-year terms beginning this year. I'll open the floor for nominations. We have 2 positions open.
I'll nominate Matt Patterson.
Okay, and is there a second for Matthew Patterson?
I'll second that.
And there's a second. So we have one position with a nomination and a second, Matthew Patterson. Do we have a second candidate? We have two positions to fill. Right now we have one with a second.
Tara, do you want to do it again? No? Okay, good. I nominate Tara.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
and there's a second. So we have two positions. Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Again, I'll ask if there is there a nomination for a third candidate? Okay, if we have no more nominations, then again, we would just ask Lori to cast one ballot. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Okay, Lori, we have two positions and two candidates. Would you be willing to cast a ballot for each? Lori, you okay with that? Okay. All right, she said she is. Okay. And now we have one more position. Okay, Mark Boudreau has 1 year currently remaining on his term. We are looking for a person to continue that term till next year. Is that correct, John? How that works?
Yes, if there's somebody who would like to fill Mark's position for the next year, he's expressed an intention to resign. If there is not a motion for someone, then he has indicated to us that he is willing to stay until a person can be found. And I think it's rather than have somebody who doesn't really want to do it, I think it'd be great if we could find somebody who really would want to do it. And Mark's been gracious enough to say that he's willing to stay until we find that person.
Okay. Is there a nomination for a person to take that 1 year on? Do we have someone that anyone would like to nominate to fill that term? Any nomination for that 1 year?
I don't see anybody. There's no.
I see no
hand raised or
nominations.
anything in the comments either. Okay,
Okay.
so Mark, if that's okay, again, that would be great if you are willing to serve until such time as we can find a replacement, and whenever a trustee resigns, the board can appoint someone to fill the rest of their term until we can elect a new trustee. So
Yes, that's fine. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark, very much. Now we'll go on to item number 4. It's an appropriation in the amount of $2,000, an increase for parent recreations. Alyssa Del Tufo is here if anyone has any questions, and she's connected with the lake as well. So is there any questions regarding this appropriation? No questions. So I will entertain a motion. If any, yep.
I have
Oh, go ahead, Ray.
Sorry, what did we appropriate last year for the lake?
3,000.
3,000?
Yeah, that's
Is
in our.
And is this 2,000 plus 3,000 or just 2,000? And if so, why are you going down from 3,000?
Because it's not down, it's up.
It's up.
It's up to 5.
Mary, you have a question?
Up to 5. All
Yes,
right, thank you.
last year, the total was 4,500. There was 3,000 in the regular budget, and then there was an additional $1,500 for, I believe it was playground equipment.
Playground, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So we sometimes ask for an additional allocation that has to do usually with a capital expense. So last year we did get an additional $1,500 for the playground, and if you go back further, there was an allocation for the building when we built that as well. But this is operating. We're asking for an increase in our operating expenses. So I know Bob had something he wanted to say. Where'd you go, Bob? Hi, Bob.
Mr. Howe, yeah. I don't see him.
No, I just wanted to have Alyssa address the whole question generally.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so, Lori, do we have a motion?
No.
No one? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to,
I'll make that motion.
okay, there's a motion to support, to pass the $2,000.
I'll second it.
And there's a second. Thank you, Ray. Any other discussion? Okay, like we've done with the other items, if you would not wish to support that, please indicate. If you would not like that to happen. Okay. Okay, I see no motion or no indication that anyone is an objection. So we'll count that as a passing by.
No.
Oh, okay, hello?
Oh, no, that's Nilu who just
Oh,
walked in, so
Okay,
I'm
Right.
unmuted at the moment, so.
that's fine. Well, thank you, Alyssa. So
Yeah.
I will go ahead. That item then has passed.
I do want to thank everybody
Thank
for
you.
all your ongoing support of Little Lake Perrin. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item is item number 5 on the agenda. Shall the Village of North Bennington appropriate funding of $500 to the Bennington County Choral Society? I don't know if there's anyone here that would like to speak for the Choral Society. But anyway, that is the next item that is up.
John, Candy Cuthbert would like to say something.
Okay, yeah, Candy?
Hi, my phone's microphone is fake, so hopefully you can hear me.
We can.
Okay. I'm a member of the Bennington County Choral Society. I have been since I moved here 16 years ago. It's really a wonderful group. It's community singers. We all just like to sing. And we put on 2 performances a year, except this year. Of course, we can't. But we've decided that we would like to ask the area towns that our singers are from if they would perhaps support us with a small donation. Our funding is from our performances and from dues and from donations. So that was the reason for the request, and I hope the village will support us. We'll be back. We just aren't sure when right now, but we will definitely be back.
Thank you, Candy. So is there a motion to support Choral Society with item 5?
I so move.
There's a move, and is there a second? And second, I believe, Mary, I feel like I'm an auctioneer. Okay, so we have a motion to approve and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Okay, like we've been doing with the other items, if you have an opposition to this, if you oppose this motion, please indicate. Okay, I see none, but if you have an opposition, please let us know. Okay, so we'll take that as a unanimous support. Okay, now we're going to item number 6. Shall the Village of North Bennington set the 2020-2021 property tax date due for November 10th? So it's setting the date of November 10th as the due date. Okay. Mary Rogers, this is pretty much traditional, right? Is that the time we normally?
This is traditional, and just looking back, I never noticed where the village actually had a motion to adopt it.
Right.
But as I was researching things and I've gone to some seminars, it's just suggested that we do. But it
Okay.
is the traditional date.
All right, yeah.
Now, I will say it's not the same date as Shaftesbury. Shaftesbury now sets a different date, but Bennington and North Bennington typically have the same date, and it would be this November 10th date.
November 10th. Thank you. Okay. So is there a motion to approve this or to accept this motion? Does anybody have a motion to approve this date? Okay, Alyssa, thank you. And a second? Okay, thank you, Candy. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Probably there's not much about it. Okay, if you have an opposition to having this date set, please indicate if you're opposing this. Okay, again, any opposition? Okay, I don't see any. John, do you see any opposition? No, okay, then we will consider that to be accepted unanimously. Okay, now there's an item 7 here. Shall the Village of North Bennington adopt the Climate Solutions Resolution for the state? Now, John, it was not printed in the annual report. I have a copy of it here. So how would you want to go about with this one?
Let me see if I can, I'm sorry, everybody.
I believe that Mary can explain this.
Okay.
Mary had requested
Yep.
that it be on the warning. Is that correct, Mary?
Yeah, Mary,
Yes.
go ahead and speak to this, please. Thank you.
Thank you. This came about because Shaftesbury and North Bennington have joined forces and have a small energy action committee that was formed. It came to our attention that North Bennington is the only one of all of our surrounding communities. Shaftesbury, Bennington, North Bennington, Arlington, Pownell, et cetera, that has not adopted that resolution. Now, typically, it would be something that would be read. First of all, the trustees had given approval to seek it,
Yep.
but which was done some time ago. But then the next thing is that it goes in front of typically an annual meeting, and it is supposed to be approved and voted on and approved and signed by a minimum of 5% of the registered voters, as
Right.
which I guess that would be typical for, I don't know, whatever you call them legally. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to be, but basically the gist of the resolution is that the village and the residents thereof support the goals of Vermont's Climate 350 initiative. And it is simply, does the village and its residents agree that the climate or the energy efficiency goals are worthy of support? The renewable energy efficiency goals.
Okay.
But I don't know how we're going to do it without people actually here.
Signing the document, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And even if it would be okay to do it via, Lori's tally of people, I don't think we have 5%.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because there's 2 parts to it, right? With the signature part. So if we were to vote on this, we still would have to have the signatures. Am I correct in assuming that, John?
Well, another option would be that we could try to call this at a special meeting that was warned for the same time as one of the regular trustees meetings, so that we could, and maybe the signatures could be gathered. Do they have to be contemporaneous, Mary? Do you know?
Oh, Mary. Oh, there you go. Mary, you need to take your mute. Yeah. Talk to us now, Mary.
I'm hovering over it because I don't want background noise. Some of the other municipalities have said, for instance, that once their select boards approved they could go forth and do it, they would go to the town dump or something like that, or a farmer's market or some other type of gathering. Most people did it at their town annual meeting, but I don't know that that's the only way.
Okay.
Well, maybe we can look into that and see if there's another option for passing that, because I know it was brought before the trustees and we did, I think we passed the resolution to say that the trustees supported it, but I think it's what you're asking is whether the village as a whole supports it, so.
Right,
Correct.
okay,
And I can share my screen to show you the document. It's here, the
There,
climate solution
nice.
resolution, but I don't know if that really helps you that much. That's
Right.
because the issue is that as you come down to the bottom, there's the signatures, and we can't do that right now. But I will put this document off to the side. Has anyone tried to access the documents that are in the chat?
I don't know. Okay.
You're in.
Mhm.
If you open up the chat menu, I posted a couple documents there, and hopefully people are able to access those, and I'll put this one on there as well.
Okay. So John, I guess my question is then, if we are going to go ahead and try to vote on this, the signature piece is not going to happen, it sounds like, at least not tonight.
Is it possible that we could vote on this with the with the assumption that there will be signatures and that itself will validate or?
Sure. If someone has an objection to that, otherwise I don't see why we wouldn't go forward.
I mean, it indicates on this resolution that should the article pass,
Yeah,
then we send a letter that says that it passed and include the count of the vote. So I don't, but this is something that's being brought before us. I didn't initiate this, so I'm not.
okay.
Can I be heard?
Bob? Yeah.
I haven't seen this before, but it looks to me from just looking at what's been posted here is that it was set up to bring it before the voters by petition, but you've already warned it. So it doesn't need all the signatures to be before the voters. You warned it already.
Okay.
And so if people want to approve it, I just think you vote and approve it. I don't think you need to worry about the signatures at all.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
So this was part of the warning, and this is the resolution that was part of the warning. And so if the voters want to pass this resolution, then we can.
Okay. That sounds fine. All right. Okay. So I still, I'm going to still ask for, I guess we'll ask John. I can't quite see everybody. If you want to take the resolution off, thank you. So I think what we can do then is if there is anyone that would want to support this, they could make a motion.
I will make that motion.
Okay, so there's a motion, and is there a second?
I'll second it.
And it's been seconded to support the climate solutions resolution. Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, if not, then what we'll do, as we've been doing through the evening, if you have an objection to having this resolution be approved, please indicate by voice or hand motion, please. Anyone that would object to this? Okay, I see no objections. So John, I guess we can take that as, unless you see anything otherwise, that it's been approved. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Unanimous consent. Yep.
Okay. I know that we have at least one item here. Now we're going to the last portion of the agenda, which is to discuss any other business found proper when met. Susan and Bob, I don't know. I know that you have, you want to discuss a little bit about these loans that are available. Susan, thank you.
Thank you. I see Rob was able to join us. So Rob, do you want to say anything, or do you want me to go ahead and mention, about the loans?
Go for it.
Okay. So this is on behalf of the Fund for North Bennington, and our trustees are some are here at the meeting, Rob Wilmington, Christine Graham, and Bob Howe, and Joe McGovern, and myself. And we wanted to share with people that in partnership, the Fund for North Bennington, along with the Vermont State Employees Credit Union, is offering interest-free loans only available to residents of North Bennington who have lost employment during this crisis. And so we're encouraging people to go on either the Fund for North Bennington's website, and you will see information that will link you to the VSECU's website. And there's an it's called a member emergency loan link. And you can go on and hopefully they will show you quickly how to fill that out. So we're really trying to get the word out to everyone in North Bennington. So please share with all of your friends, your family, the networks in North Bennington, because we really feel like this could help people out during this time. And they're short-term interest-free loans.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any other comments or discussion? Obviously, there's nothing here to vote. John, is this something that could go on the village's website, if it's not already?
Well, so the website associated with the village is the fund's website. So I'm assuming that I think I've seen it there already.
Okay.
And we'll ask that there's several community-based email lists that I think it would be great to, like for instance, it's almost like a chamber of commerce, but the North Bennington Roundtable and the VAE listserv, for instance. But we'll make sure to get the word out there.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Susan. Okay. Is there any other business or items that people would like to discuss or bring up that's not on our agenda here?
I have one thing I'd like to mention.
Yep, Dana?
Yeah, so I'm representative of the Bennington County Regional Commission from the village. And if you haven't had a chance, you may want to also check out bcrcvt.org, which is the Bennington County Regional Commission site. And Allison Stroll has put together a phenomenal compilation of COVID-19 resources on there. Just from the front page, you can find food resources, distribution information, economic and business support resources, how to volunteer, municipal resources, and public health information. And all very customized for a local area. And so it's one of the things that BCRC, we're not meeting in person, but Allison's done a lot of work on that. So great resource if you want to check that out on bcrcvt.org.
Okay, thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Dana.
Okay, anything else? Oh, Alyssa, yes.
I've been deputized to just mention that the North Bennington kiosk project is moving forward really beautifully. People are welcome to come to our driveway and see it if they'd like to. But the other, I think Norm and Joe have met and they're going to be doing like a trial installation of it in that sort of triangle of land that's in front of Eddington House at the corner of Houghton Street, trying to figure out if it's going to fit there and in what sort of orientation it's going to fit there. And I think they're going to do that in the next couple of weeks. So, but you're welcome to come by and see it if you want, or we'll try to let people know when that day is going to happen if you want to see it when Norm and Joe are struggling to put it up. So, but it really is great. Ray is making the actual box for the information underneath this kind of crazy and beautiful awning, or I'm not sure, arch and awning. But the other really interesting thing is that we decided when we submitted the application to do a kind of crowdsourcing of old tools and metal objects that people had in their garages or barns, and people have come forward with some really interesting stuff, and they're all welded into the structure. So there'll be recognition of those people as well. So it's really nice, and come by if you'd like. Maybe there'll be cookies. You never know.
Okay. Thank you. Wow, that would be something to look at. Any other items?
Yeah,
Mr. Howe?
I would like to comment on, of all the politics that's going on in the world and the country right now, it looks like North Bennington politics is rather mild, looking back at the meeting that we just had. For unanimous votes on every single item on the agenda. That's all.
Well, let's hope that's a good thing. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay.
Jenny?
Oh, Danny, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Jenny.
Okay, hi. It's really nice to see so many of you. I haven't seen people in a while. I want to jump in with a few updates from the library. Let's see. So the big one is in the library closed at the moment. But oh,
Let's see, your audio is pretty bad. You can over to the other side of the house and get on mine.
Yeah.
House is having trouble hearing.
Yeah, why don't you get her, Dana?
Audio is really broken up, so you come over to the other side of the house. We'll put you on.
Yeah, thank you.
okay.
Just like Dana, yeah,
Right,
Dana,
I don't
switch. Yeah, switch spots.
I know. All right. I'll be way over.
Yeah. There she comes. Okay, come on, dear.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's good.
So, so library's closed at the moment. We've been trying to figure out how to library without the building being open. But when I get back to the other seat, I'll have it's an online form. So we've been doing kind of online card signups, and you'll have, if you're interested in ebooks, e-audiobooks, online courses, all of that sort of thing, you can fill that out and get set up with that. We have curbside service in the works, details later this week, one way or the other. And what else? Oh, and Linda. Linda is a fantastic resource. It has 15,000 tutorials and videos for, a lot of it is tech oriented, how to build your digital skills, all of that sort of thing. So, and we had a phenomenal year at the library last year, and looking forward to sort of using this time to innovate. And I hope to see you at the library sometime very soon. And I'll have that link to get set up with ebooks and e-audio and online courses and all that when I get back to the other computer.
Okay.
And put that in the chat.
Great. Did you mention about possibly, I know that the Bennington Library is going to starting this weekend with a limited time where you send in a request and then they package it and have it ready. Would we maybe do something like that possibly, or no?
I'm hoping so. So I've drawn up a plan. The trustees are meeting, the library trustees are meeting tomorrow night to give a vote one way or another on that. And if it is voted in, we should start next week.
Great.
And let's see, if you'd like more information when that happens, if and when, it'll be in our, our next newsletter. Mm-hmm. And I'll be happy to put my email address in the chat. And so you can email me and I'll get you signed up for the newsletter.
Great. Okay. Excellent. Any other questions or any other issues that someone would like to bring up? Okay. If there are not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, but I don't want to close the door yet. Any other items or anything that anyone would like to bring up? Wow. John, this actually kind of worked in a way.
Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate your help with that. And
Yeah.
I don't want to belabor the meeting and keep everybody.
Right.
I do want to say that on behalf of the trustees, we want to thank you as the community members for everything that you've been doing from your homes and to support all of these community efforts. You know, we're doing what we can too, but you know, everybody's in the same boat here, and it's really nice to know that we can come together like this, and you know, and as Mr. Howe said, you know, we can still come to our agreements and proceed with our business. So it's good to know that we can do that.
Okay. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? We're going to just stay around. All right. Thank you, Alyssa. And is there a second? Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. This has been a different sort of thing, but it's been great. Thank you, John, and all the trustees. Okay, Mark, thank you for being the man. Thank you, Mark. Okay.
So we'll adjourn the annual meeting, and our regular trustees meeting we're going to roll right into that since it's 8:05.
Okay.
So anybody that does not want to participate in the regular trustees meeting is welcome to jump off at this point, but we're going to start with the other agenda for the regular trustees meeting. And so I am going to have to repeat a little bit of stuff here. So in the chat bar, well, actually, okay, so the first thing that I need to, there are some new participants that have come on since I read the instructions at the beginning, but the first thing that I need to do is make sure that everybody can hear me and see me. So if anybody cannot hear me or see me, can you please let us know so that we can address that before we go any further? Okay, if anybody does have any technical difficulties as we go along, if you lose audio or you lose visual or anything like that, please indicate in one of a few ways. I know, so if you can hover the center screen and open the chat box, or if you go to, I think it's the meeting tab on the top, depending on whether you have a Mac or a PC or an iPad or a phone or whatever, it's all going to be, it's not necessarily universal, but if you can find your way to the chat box, please, you can say that you're having a problem, or you can raise your hand. I think there's a raise hand option on most of these, so please let us know. I also, a lot of you have my email and my phone number as well, so if you can't use Zoom for some reason, please feel free to call me or to email me, and I'll be sort of monitoring that to make sure if somebody gets kicked off for some reason that we can pause to make sure that they're back on. So since this is a new meeting, I'm going to start by saying that as the chair of the village trustees, I'm finding that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of COVID-19 and pursuant to Addendum 6 of his Executive Order 01-20 and Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, I confirm that we are providing the public access through this electronic means. We're using the Zoom platform. All members of the board and the public have the ability to participate in the meeting contemporaneously. We have provided notice in the Bennington Banner and Front Porch Forum, as well as it was posted. And let's see. I just went over, if anyone has a problem, how to address that. In the event the public is determined to not be able to access the meeting, we will continue to a time and place certain so that we can address the issues here. As far as votes that are taken at this meeting, any votes that are not unanimous will be done by roll call. Okay, and that is in accordance with the law that was passed. Normally you could do a ballot vote, but we can't do a ballot vote virtually. So we will just go down through the members of the voting body, and people can indicate their position on any issue that's being voted on. So I will ask at this time, Lori, is there since I think there's 21 participants at this point, 5 of which are the board and 2 are the clerk and the treasurer. So why don't we go down and identify everybody as a roll call so that the clerk can make sure and know everybody that's at the meeting for purposes of the minutes, okay? And I will technically officially call the meeting to order at this time. So, and who knows what order we're in. So I'll actually say, so the board members, the trustees of the Village of North Bennington are myself. My name is John Lamson. Mark Boudreau, Boudreau, is on the board of trustees as well. Aaron McKinney is present. Matthew Patterson is present, and Tara Lowry is also present. So those are the 5 members of the board. And our clerk is Laureen Elwell. Would you raise your hand, Lori? There she is. And Mary Rogers is our treasurer. There, okay. And the rest of the participants are members of the public and or representatives from some of the organizations that have business before the board today. So if you would like to introduce yourself, you can go ahead and do that at this time. I'm not really sure how to order this. I don't, I know that people aren't seeing people in the same order necessarily on their screen, but just go ahead and
John, let me volunteer since I'm right next to you from my screen here. My name is Tung Bui, and I represent a company called Terabon Engineering, and we work with the college on the cell tower placement and negotiations for the building of the tower.
And Mr. Chair, my name is Will Dodge. I'm an attorney at Downs Rackwood Martin, and our firm prepared the 60-day notice. And I have with me tonight several witnesses who are able to answer questions after the presentation. So that includes Stephen Kelleher, who's the principal with Vertex Towers, LLC. Janelle Smith, who's with Centerline Communications and works closely with AT&T. And Sohail Usmani, who's a radio frequency engineer with C-Squared Engineering.
And is there anybody else who'd like to introduce themselves to the board?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Andy Schlatter from Bennington College, Vice President of Facilities Management and Planning. I'll be speaking about the tower.
Just gonna
And I'm Kim Hall. and I'm a resident of North Bennington at 21 Prospect Street.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. And let's see. I have a request to do a stack in the chat, but I even though there's a parenthetical that tries to explain that, I still am not clear as to if that was something for attendance. I think we've got that. So let's do, if it's all right, well, let's proceed with the agenda. Which starts off, well, no, let's modify the agenda so that we can just discuss the issue that everybody's here for first, and then we can take care of the rest of the business afterward, once we've had our presentation. So we do have an opportunity for to get information about a proposed telecommunication tower here in North Bennington, as well as have citizen comments about that. So the way that I'd like to proceed with that is to first hear our presentation, and I'd like to, I think I have the settings so that whoever's doing the presentation can share their screen, but if not, let me know, and I can probably select the ability to give you that ability. But is that going to be you, Mr. Dodge, that does the presentation, or Mr. Bui?
No, that's correct, Mr. Chair. And I'm just wondering, so I just tried to set this up, and I believe that everyone can see these slides, but maybe before we go any further, before I start, is that the case? Can everyone see that first slide on their screen?
So it's being shared with me, and I can see it.
Yep. Yes, I'm good. Okay, great. Well, I'll assume that that's the case. Again, my name is Will Dodge. I'm here tonight on behalf of both Vertex Towers and AT&T to talk about a proposed wireless facility, a new tower at the Bennington College campus. And so what I'd like to do is, as I said before, I have several witnesses who are here to explain different facets of the project: Janelle Smith, Steve Kelleher, and Sohail Usmani. And what I found has been effective in the past when we do this live is to go through the presentation. As I do so, if folks want to write down their questions or even put them on the chat, I think my preference would be not to answer them right away, but once we're through the presentation, then I think, Mr. Chair, if you would field the questions, or if you direct us to answer the questions, then between the four members of our team, we should be able to answer.
Yes, and thank you for that. My desk is all full of papers here for tonight. So, but yeah, as far as procedurally, I would ask that any members of the body address any questions to me, so that I can then direct them to the presenters. That's just, generally the way public meetings work, and I think it works well when we do it that way. I don't think that it's going to be an issue given the number of attendees we have today, but if there is an issue with time, I will reserve the discretion to sort of limit time so that we can get to bed tonight.
Absolutely. And to preface that, I am going to make this presentation available on our project website, and we'll make sure that everyone can access it afterwards. So realizing that we are under a certain amount of time constraints, what I'm going to do is first of all talk about an overview of the AT&T Firstnet Project, which is the reason that we're pursuing this site on behalf of AT&T right now. Then talk a little bit about the Vertex AT&T facility that's proposed for Bennington College. Third, talk about AT&T wireless coverage. In other words, why are we proposing this specific site at this location, and what is some of the benefits to the town in terms of cell service and wireless service. Then I'll talk a little bit about the Section 248A process before the Vermont Public Utility Commission, and a little bit about the Bennington planning documents, both for the village and the town. And then I'll end with making a request of the village trustees, which is the way the 248A process works, is to ask for a recommendation regarding the tower. So what we're looking for is for the village trustees, and it doesn't necessarily need to be tonight, but during what's called this 60-day process, which basically runs through the end of June, to issue a recommendation to AT&T and Vertex that can then be used to go to the Public Utility Commission. And that recommendation could be in favor of the project, against the project, or some type of conditional recommendation. All three have been done in the past, and however it's done, we'll ultimately address that when we file our petition. And that petition, as I'll explain later, will trigger another process for public comments. So let me first talk a little bit about the Firstnet project. AT&T has been one of the major projects it's working on at the moment, really back since December of 2017, was to implement what's called Firstnet. Firstnet technically is the First Responder Network Authority, and it's a federal agency in Washington that was commissioned to try to build a nationwide communication service for for first responders. That is ambulance, police, fire, National Guard, even the Army, to use in the event of an emergency. It was created as a result of the 9/11 Commission's recommendation. I think most of you remember during 9/11 that one of the many security issues that took place was that multiple first responders in New York, in Washington, D.C., in Pennsylvania, and all over the country could not interconnect and communicate with one another, and also had problems because with so many users all using the cell network at once, those first responders did not have priority to the extent that they were also trying to use the data network to send pictures or videos and the like. So Firstnet was invented to essentially address that issue. What happened is the Firstnet Authority in 2012 determined that they did not have the bandwidth to create a network of wireless towers all across the entire United States. So it put the whole project out to bid, and as a result of a very long process, AT&T ultimately won the bid. And then AT&T was required to go individually, state by state, to see whether the plan that it proposed for individual states would ultimately be approved. By December of 2017, all the states, including Vermont, had opted in. And so since the end of 2017, AT&T has been rolling out several sites as part of the Firstnet network. What that really means is, in part, this is a public process. The federal government put $90 billion into the project, and AT&T matched that with another $90 billion of its own. The idea is that they've been working with all kinds of public safety folks at every level of government to try to implement the program and get as many subscribers on board as possible. One of the ways that I've found it easiest to explain what Firstnet really is, because it's amorphous until you see it in action, is a short movie that I have queued up. So if you'll give me 1 second, I'm still learning exactly how to do this, but we're getting better, a little bit better each and every time. Bear with me. I'm going to show you that movie. It runs for about a little over, I think it's 4 minutes. And we did try this earlier today and the audio worked. So let's give it a shot.
First responders are on the front line of our safety and security. Lives depend on their ability to communicate. Firstnet is developing a wireless network just for them, to modernize their communications and keep them connected every day and during every emergency. Firstnet was born out of the 9/11 Commission recommendation to enhance communications used by fire, police, and EMS. This united the public safety community, which pushed for their own communications network. As a result of their advocacy, Congress created Firstnet as the focal point for the first nationwide public safety broadband network. The network will put advanced technologies, applications, and devices into the hands of first responders to help them save lives and protect communities.
FirstNet represents a way for us to exchange information in a way and a speed and with a reliability that we've never even had available to us before.
With a system that's being proposed like FirstNet, that's going to be huge in our ability to get that data back and forth without having to worry about the public's need for data exchange as well.
So we're looking forward to the day when public safety is able to do the work really unthrottled, and no matter where we are on the network.
We've got to make sure that when that police officer, that first responder needs information, no matter where it is at your location, it's got to be available, and it's got to be available right then. That's why FirstNet is so important.
We're excited about FirstNet because of the dedicated public safety spectrum that's going to be available to us in the event that something catastrophic happens.
FirstNet is led by a board of directors that understands and represents public safety, and has expertise in technology and mobile networks. To design the network, FirstNet is taking a for public safety, by public safety approach, so that it provides responders with the coverage, capacity, security, interoperability, and quality of service they need to communicate and share information. Also, FirstNet is harnessing the power of the private sector to build and operate the network. This business model will deliver technology and innovation over the network for years to come, with no additional funding needed for deployment and operation.
If you think about what FirstNet is, it's the first project of this magnitude and of this capability nationwide for our country. So this is a very important infrastructure project for public safety. I think people were insightful enough to see that this needed to be a public-private partnership, because you needed to bring technology and innovation that is inherent in the private sector, along with getting the needs of public safety built into that planning.
We have a paramedic, police officer, and fire chief sitting on the board of directors. Here is a place where you can reach out and touch people that understand your industry, care about your industry, and we're building the network for you.
We are going to be advocates and pushing innovation and technology for years to come on behalf of public safety so that they get the best advantages of technology as it evolves. That's what FirstNet's goal and objectives are, is to be able to get the tools and the technology to the people, even in the most remote areas.
Success is delivering to public safety the capability they need to save lives, theirs and the public.
Bear with me for 1 second. So I hope everyone could hear that okay. And what I'll do here, if you'll bear with me, is just return a little bit to the presentation and give you a little bit more of an idea regarding, so as you can see from that, part of the reason that I show that particular video is because it really demonstrates to a large degree that it's a system that's not only supposed to work in urban environments, which is kind of obvious where you would need a system like that, but also in rural environments for search and rescues, or all kinds of events that we can and can't foresee. There's a whole myriad of applications that are being developed in order to enhance the experience for public safety users, but ultimately the whole plan relies on the same network that is used for AT&T wireless customers all across the country. So a big part of the FirstNet plan is to expand coverage throughout the country. You can see here all kinds of places around the country where there's new sites ultimately being developed. This shows a lot of northern New Hampshire and northern Maine as being left out, but in fact, even that are sites that we're in the process of working on. And Vermont has been a priority for a long time with a number of different sites. This type of sites that we've been looking at, for instance, in Bennington County, We've been looking for towers that exist already that we can normally co-locate antennas on. So we're working on, for instance, on new projects in Shaftesbury, which are, one is up and running, the other is kind of on the way. Or in other cases, trying to redevelop existing towers completely, like replace them. And that's one of the things that we're doing in Woodbury in Peru. And there's projects like this going all over the state at the moment. Whenever AT&T can co-locate on an existing structure, it does. But there's many areas in the state where there's simply nothing to co-locate on. And there's often instances like what is true with Bennington College, where AT&T has been looking for an appropriate site for years and years, not finding anything, and now having both the funding and the mandate to ultimately try to address the issue. So with that, let me talk a little bit more. You've seen sort of a basic understanding of FirstNet. Let's talk a little bit more about this specific facility. So the location of the project is right here off of Bennington College Road System on the Bennington College campus. And just to give you sort of a sense of the players and the roles here as we go forward. So Vertex Towers is a company that's been working in the wireless infrastructure industry since 2012, and they ultimately develop and build towers that are then managed and marketed and rented to co-locators like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and others. AT&T, we've obviously talked a little bit about. A big part of the reason that they're trying to develop this particular site is FirstNet, but also just to improve the customer experience in Bennington, and particularly on the campus. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Bennington College has been working with Vertex to ultimately enter into a lease, but that's not their only role. Their other role, as was pointed out earlier, is to help with the actual design and location for an appropriate place on the campus that's consistent with the values of the college, but also trying to make sure that the facility works as it's supposed to. And then Centerline Communications works closely with AT&T and Vertex on ultimately making sure that AT&T's antennas and equipment get onto towers once they're built. And C Squared is involved in independently assessing what AT&T's own radio frequency engineers determine about the suitability of a particular site. So what you can see is, here's Bennington College Extension Road System. And you can see that there's on this pink line, this is basically part of where the utility access would go to ultimately get to a compound, which is this pink square. It's a 50 by 50 lease area. The idea is that within that lease area, and this section would be cleared, we would install an 115-foot above ground monopine communications tower. So it's 110 feet, and then you've got a 5-foot crown like a pine tree on the top. We'll see that a little bit more. There's AT&T equipment consisting of antennas, surge arresters, and what are called remote radio heads that are below the tower, so they don't exceed that 110-foot line. In the ground, within the compound, there's what's called a walk-in cabinet for equipment. There's a 15 kW diesel generator, which has its own self-contained tank and a containment, a spill containment unit. And you've got a gate with barbed wire on it, a little turnaround area at the base of the compound, and then those access and utilities. The idea is there's an existing trail that runs from the College Road system up to the music building, and that's basically going to be sort of the entry point to ultimately build the site. And the exact details are still being worked out, but this is the basic route. Here you can see it a little bit more clearly. You can see the topography of this area, that this is one of the higher points. It's not the highest point in the area, but it's getting toward one of the higher points in the general vicinity of this forest that surrounds the edge of the campus on and extends to basically to the property boundary. Then you can see kind of at least a initial schematic of the compound area. This is the 50 by 50. You'd have the tower right in the middle. You'd have areas for AT&T's walk-in cabinet, as well as areas for other co-locators to put equipment in the future. Here's the turnaround area where you basically park a single vehicle to access the site. And here's the vertical profile of what we call a tapered monopine
that tends to have branches that are wider at the bottom and get narrow, more and more narrow till you get to the top. And then you have a crown on top. Generally, what we do is we'll paint the antennas to match the color of the fake branches and paint the trunk or the tower itself some type of brown to make it blend with the surrounding background. Now, although this wasn't contained in our advance notice, we have been doing environmental due diligence to start to look at the impacts. We have a wetland scientist who determined that there's no swales or depressions, springs or groundwater seeps that would create any type of wetland vegetation. And we've also confirmed as part of what's called the National Environmental Policy Act review, which is something that AT&T is required to do for its federal license, that there's no designated wilderness area, wildlife preserve, or threatened or critical, threatened or endangered species in the area, nor is there any type of floodplain. And we sort of confirmed that the Army Corps would not treat any of these areas that we'd be affecting as wetlands. We still have yet to start what's called the Section 106 process, which is to look at the impact on historic structures, but that's something that runs concurrently with the 248 permitting process. So the thing that people are almost always the most interested in when it comes to these towers are the visual impact. And what we did, in part at the request of the college and in part because we were doing our own due diligence to try to identify an ideal site, is what's called a balloon test, where a balloon is floated in the air at a height of 115 feet to basically be at the top of where the crown is. And then it's photographed from various locations on both public areas and areas, in this case, of the campus that we could access. And what the photo map shows is basically all of these areas within a 1 mile radius where areas looked at. And what you can see is that most of the visibility, places that were either green for fully visible or yellow for partially visible, were within about a 1/2 mile radius of where the tower is located, and that there were many locations that we documented where you couldn't see the tower at all. So let's just take a look at these. What I focused on is primarily areas where you could actually see the tower. So this is basically right on the site, 197 feet from where it would be located within the woods. And you can see here in the background, the green faux branches. You can barely see the antennas at all. And remember, these are at leaf-off conditions. So this is at its kind of maximum visibility from this location. But this is what somebody might notice if they're walking down that existing trail during the winter. Very innocuous, ultimately, from that location. This is from the Bennington College Road system. So again, very close by, it's that parking area just outside of where the trail is located. There you can see the balloon with the arrow, and this is approximately what the structure would look like when fully constructed. It's another location a little bit further away, about 0.15 miles away from the Bennington College Road system location. This is kind of the area with the fullest visibility, number 4. You can see the balloon there, and again, that's the facility. So that's probably the most that you'll see this site from any of the locations nearby. Once you start getting further away, here's from 0.23 miles. This is also Bennington College Road system. There you can see the balloon. And here, especially because of a combination of topography and these existing trees, it starts to blend in very nicely with that canopy. Similarly over here, this is from Houghton Street. This is roughly about 1/3 of a mile away. You can just barely see the balloon where I'm circling with my pointer. And there you can see it kind of blending with the background. In this location, this was almost indecipherable to see. I had to basically try to pixelate to see it. But this is about 1/2 a mile away on Campus Road, looking at the site from one of the parking areas. And really, you can barely distinguish between the before and the after. It's almost imperceptible from that location. As I said, there's multiple other locations. I focused here on ones that are taken from the Bennington College campus itself or from nearby, where we confirmed that you couldn't see the tower at all. So we're very happy about the the visual impact ultimately. And those photo simulations, by the way, are available on the project website for everyone to see. And obviously, you can see them again with this presentation. So let's talk about the wireless coverage associated with the facility. Right now, AT&T has no sites within the village of North Bennington. It has 2 sites in Bennington, one that's basically up by Mount Anthony, and another that's in the cupola of the Benmont Mill further downtown. It has 2 sites in Pownell, one that's on Carpenter Hill, and the other which is the Man Hill Farm. Then there's 2 other sites nearby. One is in Shaftesbury on a VPR tower. That was the one I was referring to earlier. That one very recently came online. And then there's another site that's further up, basically toward Glastonbury, right on the edge of Route 7 at its highest point, coming into that sort of Glastonbury-Shaftesbury area. So right now, none of these sites, although they're providing coverage into sort of central Bennington and on the edges of North Bennington, none of those sites can be modified or changed in any way to obviate the need for a new tower facility. The areas that we're ultimately trying to improve the coverage on, as well as the capacity, I'll explain what capacity means here in a minute, include State Highway 279, and you can see here by the green and the orange, just areas that are white are places where AT&T has basically no coverage or minimal coverage. The other areas are areas where there's partial or full coverage, depending on whether you're in building or outside. So State Highway 271, Bennington College Road over here, you can see the coverage is very spotty. Bits of Highway 7 and a little bit more 7A, and I would say especially 67A, and then all of the sort of secondary feeder roads that go into those highways, as well as I stated before, Bennington College itself, where the coverage is okay in certain sections, but with people moving around the campus all the time, at least when we're not in a COVID-19 situation, it's important that coverage really be everywhere on that campus, both for the user experience and for public safety. So with the new site, once it's put in at the proposed height, what that will basically lead to is about 1.2 miles of new coverage along State Highway 279, about a little over a mile on Bennington College Road, 0.8 of a mile on 7 and 7A, and what it amounts to in terms of coverage to residents. And again, realizing that for the moment, we're using 2010 census data, so a lot of this might change, but the estimate that C² comes up with is about a little over 1,000 additional residents having wireless service at their house, and that amounts to about 290 additional employees looking at businesses and institutions in the area who would be served by the facility. And then needless to say, all of the roads and everything around the general area. So again, you take a look at before in this area that I'm circling with my pointer, and then afterwards you see a lot of improvement in that general vicinity. The other thing that this facility is designed to serve is what's called capacity. So for those of you who use wireless phones, and I suspect that's most of you these days, one of the worst experiences you can have as a user is seeing that you've got 4 bars on your phone, and yet you are trying to send a text or to do a movie or to do something on the internet, or else hold a phone call, and yet it drops. And the reason for that is capacity. There are points at which there are too many users all trying to use their phone at one time. And the reason that capacity is especially important in the context of the Firstnet project is that in the event of an emergency, as I was explaining before, if there were some calamity like a hurricane or a flood or something worse than that, you can very easily foresee times when everyone is trying to use their phone and there's not enough capacity if you're a first responder trying to get information in order to avoid basically your own phone being shut down. So Firstnet provides preemptive service to first responders, but the idea of this site is to also offload traffic from all of those other existing sites that I mentioned in Shaftesbury, Town of Bennington, and Pownell. And what the ultimate result is to just improve the overall capacity of the system by roughly 20% in terms of the calls that it can handle. Now, we'll talk a little bit here about the height of the facility. The reason that we're ultimately proposing this facility at 106 and not 96, which would be consistent with what's in the town of Bennington's telecommunications facilities ordinance that says you normally don't extend beyond 20 feet above the surrounding tree canopy, which is 76 feet, is a certain amount of loss of coverage. So what this shows basically on the chart that we produce is that if we were to reduce the height of the tower, we would start to experience some more losses along College Road and a little bit along the fringes of the feeder roads leading towards State Highway 279, as well as a little bit up here driving toward Lake Perrin. You can see that that amounts to about, a little bit more than 50 people, which doesn't sound like very much unless you're one of those 50 people who doesn't get the benefit of additional service. But what I think the number that's much more important is the 1 mile of roadway coverage that's lost. More and more we see people relying on their phones for navigation or other tools. And so that loss of 1 mile of roadway coverage means that AT&T has to try to find some other way of making up for that loss. That's not easy to do given the competing priorities, both in Vermont and even within Bennington County for other sites. So that's a big reason why we're proposing the 106 feet. And the other reason is that realistically speaking, having that extra height allows for a second carrier to be below 10 feet below where AT&T proposes to go. And in doing so, what that means is it's one less other tower project that is going to have to ultimately come before the village or the Public Utility Commission to get approved. One other concern that very often arises when we're working on these facilities is the question of what are called radio frequency emissions. Radio frequency emissions are basically non-ionizing radiation, so non-heat radiation that comes from antenna facilities. Those are regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. And under a federal statute, states and local governments can only regulate that aspect of a siting project to the extent of confirming that a facility meets what's called the maximum permissible exposure limit for occupational services and for the general public around the site. That MPE standard was originally set in 1996, and back in December, it was actually reaffirmed by the FCC as still being the standard for measuring compliance. What the chart that I show on the presentation and that we'll include with the petition demonstrates is that at a worst case scenario, basically you're at what's called at 5.85% of that upper limit. So if this is the limit for human exposure for the general public getting toward any type of antenna facility, and really you have to be basically right at it or in the compound for that to take place, you would still only be at 5% of what's considered that safety limit. As a practical matter, as you move away from any facility, that drop or those MPEs basically start to drop exponentially in terms of the exposure. So the most important thing is the facility itself will have signage on it telling people that if you're not working here, don't go into this facility. But the facility itself is very safe, and this 5.85% number is very similar to virtually every other site that AT&T has in Vermont, with the exception maybe of certain mountaintop sites that are kind of in a different category, like top of Killington, top of the Scutney. So that gives you an idea of the facility itself. I'll talk a little bit about the Section 248A review. What happens with Section 248A is as part of going before the Public Utility Commission, a town or a regional planning commission can make a recommendation on a particular project based on land conservation measures in its municipal or regional plan, as well as based on bylaws or ordinance relating to telecommunications. So one of the obligations of an applicant like AT&T and Vertex is to take a look at the various plans and to determine whether they comply with the plans, and if they don't, to explain the reasons for that. So looking at and I wrote here the town plan, but it's in fact the village plan that I looked at, it's very clear that that around North Bennington, the village is encouraged to participate in planning for state-of-the-art communications technologies, and that telephone service is increasingly being conducted by wireless providers, and it's important that good service be available throughout the village. But at the same time, telecom towers must be located with great sensitivity to the environment and to the scenic view. And a visual proliferation of towers and antennas can be avoided through careful siting and co-location on single tower structures. The regional plan for Bennington County says something very similar to what's in the village plan. So I think in general, we feel that this is a well-sited facility, and it's certainly designed to try to improve the service in this area of Bennington, both on and off of the campus. In terms of the village zoning bylaws, we've looked closely at them, and from our perspective, it's basically silent on telecommunications facilities. There's a few mentions, but there's no specific regulations about this. But keeping in mind that the facility is providing service in both the village and the town, we thought it appropriate to look at the town zoning bylaws. And what those do is basically say that, there's multiple provisions that if this were going before the Development Review Board in Bennington, they would look at. We meet most of them, but there's two that we don't meet. One is the tree height criteria, which we've already talked about. And as I said, again, the reason that we're still proposing a height of 106 feet is to accommodate co-location, but also to basically get as good as coverage in the area as we can, bearing in mind our responsibility to FirstNet. The other criteria is a 500-foot setback, which from our to residences, which from our perspective appears that it's a little bit restrictive, and that it may have been based on concerns about radio frequency emissions. We've dealt with the radio frequency emissions concern. The other point that we would say is, if we had more room in the forest to move it back further from where it's located, we would do so. But looking at it both with Bennington and in terms of having it still basically remain short and appear blended into the tower, if we were to move it to 500 feet, we would end up in the middle of this field to the south and basically defeat all of the stealthing that you get when you look at those photo simulations, especially from right up close to it. So that's the reason why we are not strictly compliant with that 500-foot setback to the extent it even applies, but the reasons for that are to ultimately try to meet the other goals in the siting. So that gives you some sense of the project. As I say, I'm going to make sure that tonight's presentation is posted on the project website, and I'll send that to the village so that you have it. And I think with that, myself, Sohail, and Jamil, and Steve will all be available to take questions. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Will. This is Andy Schlatter from Bennington College. I just wanted to mention that from the college's perspective, we spent a fair amount of effort looking at different sites around the campus before ultimately landing on this one, and felt that this particular site offered the best mix of optimizing cell phone coverage based on the parameters that Will just described, but also minimizes any aesthetic impact both to the campus and to the surrounding community. I think the photo simulations demonstrate that fairly well, but also I've been on the site, walked it with the Vertex engineer, and looked at impact on the ground plane as well, which I'm concerned about. And the location relative to this topographical feature that's there really kind of tucks the compound into a spot where it's really not visible unless you're right up on it. And co-locating it relative to an existing, what is now a dirt path on campus, minimizes disruption relative to creation of the access pathways as well. So there was a lot of thought and care that went into siting this location from the college's perspective. And I just wanted to mention that for everyone's awareness.
Okay, thank you very much. So there was a couple questions. Do people want to ask their questions directly, or do you want me to field the ones that were posted in the chat? So one of the questions was about the pad, and I think, can you describe a little bit more about the pad? Because I think there may have been some confusion as to the actual size of the pad that the tower sits on, as is the measurement taken at 50 feet from the pole, or the entire length of the pad?
No, just to be clear, so a typical communications compound is basically a 50 by 50 enclosure. There's gravel that's basically sitting on the ground for most of it, and then there's the short pad that's usually there's a 4 by 6 pad for the generator, and another pad that's roughly 9 by 9 for what's called the walk-in cabinet, where all of the computers, all of the equipment are located. It's not even a traditional equipment shelter like you'd see on a construction site. It's basically like a closet that you walk into. Everything else is just gravel, and those other pads that I think I was trying to show here on that slide, let me just quickly show it again quickly here, is these are basically just future reserved areas for other carriers, and they would more than likely install something similar to AT&T. So most of what's within the square itself, right, within the fenced area, is basically just gravel.
Okay, but from the furthest out dotted line to the other side dotted line, that's your 50 feet?
Yes, right. Well, this is basically and Steve, you correct me if I'm wrong, Steve Kelleher, but this is basically the clearing, and the compound itself is this area with the white squares going all the way around it. There's the gate where you come in. Here's the tower itself. The tower will have some sort of a foundation, but that foundation is probably not going to occupy quite this much space. Steve, do you want to expand on that at all?
Yep, how you doing? Steve Keller at Vertex. There will be a little bit of overclearing. You know, there's going to be a 50 by 50 compound. You're probably looking at about 10 feet or so more on all sides for overclearing, because we have to get the crane in there, and we cut the brush back a little bit. But you know, I know the college is pretty sensitive to the amount of clearing that we're going to do, so everything's going to be as tight as humanly possible.
So can we, this is Kim Hall, who lives at 21 Prospect Street, so I'm your next door neighbor. And the simulations that you're proposing or you're showing to us do not illustrate 10,000 square foot removal of trees that would be included per your notice.
And I think
therefore,
sorry,
therefore, we're looking at a rather deceptive view of a red balloon amidst trees, rather than a clearing of 10,000 square feet with an artificial cell tower in the center of it.
Yeah, so if I can address that, Mr. Chair, I think admittedly, it's so this is an area where the Public Utility Commission looks at a project that has less than 10,000 square feet of clearing as a project of limited size and scope. And I think the point that I was trying to make in the advance notice is we actually don't know yet what the exact amount of clearing is going to be, but we anticipate that it's going to be less than 10,000 square feet. Even so, though, and I'll put up the slide so that you can see a little bit better, a lot of the clearing that's involved actually is not the compound itself, but might be on the edges of the access road and the utilities. So let me just quickly try to demonstrate that.
Which is why it's not finalized, and we don't know exactly the amount of tree removal that you're proposing. And none of the tree removal, and none of the tree removal is illustrated in the simulations.
So that, I think the question has been put to the Attorney Dodge, and he's trying to respond to the question, which is that the photos that were generated do not include removal of the removal of the trees that are there. Is that fair?
I think that some of them actually anticipate that, but because of the density of that forest, there's a lot of them that you can't remove from the photo itself. And what I would also stress is that, again, a lot of the clearing that would be involved in getting to that 10,000 square feet is going to be for areas that are not going to be, obviously you're going to need to clear, as Mr. Kelleher said, directly around the compound. So you're going to lose this area. But what Vertex is trying to do is to preserve as much of the tree vegetation as possible, using as much of the existing access road as possible, and trying to cut a pretty narrow swath for the utilities. Anything to add to that, Steve?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. It's a valid concern. You're still left with 100 or 150 foot tree buffer from the base of from the outer edge of the compound to Prospect Street, and then it's a little bit more than that going to the south. So you'll see and the tree heights are pretty similar there. So and what you're taking, and I guess it's obviously because I do this all the time, but your tree heights, it's not like you have 50-foot trees and 20-foot trees. So in this area, the tree heights are pretty steady. So someone on Prospect Street, the visual impact up on the upside is not going to be any different. Now, if you're intimating that maybe you could see the compound, we could suggest the arborvitaes around the base of the facility. So if you think that you might see it a little bit more clearer from the street level, which I still don't think is accurate, but we would definitely offer to put arborvitaes around the fenced area, so any visual impact on the ground would be negligible.
Well,
you can see the tree heights as you're coming off here. These trees on the outer edge, those aren't going away. So and then when the leaves come on, that's how it's going to be invisible from this vantage point. It's going to be
also add a few words to that. I work with the college to negotiate the contract and the lease with Vertex, and I want to point out that our contract and our lease with Vertex requires restoration of the disturbed areas that after construction has to be restored back to where it was. We also limit the access that Vertex has outside of the immediate leased area. They will have enough space to operate and construct, but then they have to restore after that. And also, we, the college, have the right to reserve and review their construction drawings and approve it. They have to receive our consent to make sure that we clearly understand the disturbance area and areas that we do not believe we agree with how they access the site. We have the right control to make sure they do not take up more than they need for the construction period. And then finally, the construction drawings has not been started yet, only because we are in an early stage of our negotiations right now in the development of this project that we're not quite in terms of defining how the precise construction is going to take place. But when it does get there, it will require the college's approval on this construction drawing. So I think that we have a lot of eyes, and Andy being here from the facility side with college will allow us to make sure that the protection of the grounds is in place.
I'm afraid that I still disagree with the interpretation that it is going to have a minor visual effect in the area. And I suggest that you're putting the tower where the trees are the largest. You have some of the largest, maybe the largest dogwood on the campus, which is 13 feet in diameter at its base, right next to this compound. In fact, I'm sure that it will be killed as a result of the installation. And I'm a bit confused because I would think that a sizable amount of power needs to be brought to this tower, electrical power. You have an electrical power easement leading up to the back of the alumni building, right behind the farmhouse building, I think it's called. And just off that, first of all, you have access directly through the right of way. And you could erect a tower there that would better serve the lower portions of the town. If you go back to your coverage map, you've got a big white zone along Water Street with this installation. If you move it closer to the area where I'm talking about, adjacent to that farmhouse zone where there's a dump, an old dump now, you would have lower tree heights. You would have further distances from all the residents of the town. And you would better serve the low-lying areas of Water Street and along the Woolham's.
Mr. Chair, one possibility is that, and I suspect that this is something that if it would please the village, we could, in all likelihood, look at a map that basically shows which trees are being cut, which ones are being cleared, once we're a little closer to finalizing the exact extent of the construction drawings.
That would be great. I think the other thing it sounds like is clearly a concern is to have that planting of some sort of screening as far as the ground level visual. I think if on your simulation number 1, looking at it from the ground level, from the where the columns are at the entrance of the college near there, I think it would be visible from ground level there, and that some type of screening could help with that.
And I might add, how are you attempting to limit the desecration of that memorial for the dead student who is on that path? Was that a consideration, Mr. Schlatter?
Yeah, we have noted that the location of that memorial placard for a student who's deceased, and we'll work to avoid that location. It's close to the intersection of where the access road would branch off from this existing dirt path.
What we're looking at right now, the slide we're on now, that memorial's on the orange trail, not
No,
the purple one.
It's on the pinks.
It's on along the pink.
It is along the pink one. Okay.
So that would be something that we could flag to basically both on the drawings and for construction to avoid.
Correct, and it's not a burial site; it's a placard memorializing a student.
Let's see.
Again, I would ask if the college is concerned about this location. I mean, if they're concerned about violating the restrictions by the Bennington Development Review Board, why don't they entertain an alternative location with lower tree heights, with better service to the low-lying areas in the community, and which are distant from the residences?
Is that question posed to the Vertex or the college?
To the college.
Okay. So were other locations considered, and if there are preferred locations that are within the zoning regulations, then why are those not the primary considerations as opposed to this one, Mr. Andy?
Yes. Actually, the setback that was mentioned by Mr. Dodge in his presentation, that's the first time we are being made aware of that 500-foot setback. So in all honesty, that was not a consideration of the colleges at the time. We did review other sites along the eastern edge of campus, which would be along the College Road as you track around to the east and towards sorry, what's the road that intersects College Road? Yes, thank you. So we looked at a couple sites along there and found that they would either conflict with a wetland area in there or be much more visible to the views of residents of College Road. We did not review any sites further to the west or north.
And Mr. Chair, just because I want the record to be clear, the 500-foot setback is actually not does not apply, strictly speaking, to the village of Bennington. It's only in the town of Bennington. But even so, if you look at all of the setbacks for both the village and the town, there's no other setback that's more than 200 feet. So if we assume that there was something quirky about the 500 feet, which we do, based on the, a concern about radio frequency emissions that was in effect at the time that many ordinances similar to what town of Bennington has was passed, we're definitely more than 200 feet from any other residence or any other area. So in other words, we meet for this facility the strictest setback that exists for any type of structure of any resource in the village of North Bennington.
If I may also add a few words to that, I think that it's important to recognize that once the site is built and AT&T is on here, the service to AT&T will be awesome. Everyone will get 4 bars of coverage on their phones, but that will not be the case for T-Mobile or US Cellular or Verizon. And so our construction and selection of this location actually is very helpful for other companies also to co-locate in the future so that we don't proliferate additional towers in addition to this one because it's too low. So the height is really important for us to accommodate future wireless carriers so that we don't have to build more cell towers.
But if the tree canopy was lower, you would have just as good service. And it is lower in the area that I'm suggesting you look at. So I'm confused as to why you would not want to explore a place next to a right-of-way where a dump is located currently, and with a lower tree canopy that better serves the low-lying areas of the town. Why would you not want to explore such an alternative?
I think, Mr. Chair, the brief response is that we've been working with the college and that the goal for this particular search ring for over 10 years has been to improve service around Bennington College, which has among the highest use, not only by the students who are there and the faculty, but also when there are major events. Again, back when we get through COVID-19, it is one of the areas where you have the greatest demand and where you suffer these capacity problems like we're explaining earlier.
And nothing in my proposal would impact the cellular service improvement that you're proposing for the college, because it's still on college property. It's even closer in to the main use of the college.
Okay, well, the trustees can take that comment, I think, because it sounds to me that what's being presented before us today is a proposal for this location and whether to support this location or not. And if we are presented with other much more suitable locations, then we can decide not to support this project. But I don't know if it's necessarily a good use of time to have Vertex respond to a location that they haven't investigated yet. So I think we'll take that, we'll note that, and I think I do see from the presentation that the closest residence to this location is a North Bennington residence, not a college residence. So I would ask that, if locations to the west and south of this were not explored, that would be worth exploring, I would think, just because there is also a wooded area there that's more on the in between the college and National Hangar. I know that it's probably, there's a slope issue there, I would think, but certainly it sounds like if that wasn't looked at, that it would be worth at least examining. And it looks like there's quite a few questions here. So
John, would you object to my sharing a screen with the proposal that I'm making?
There's a lot of questions on the sidebar. I just want to make sure that I allow some other people to get some questions in as well. But yes, I can
Sure.
let anybody share the screen if they want to, if that's helpful. So,
John, I'm happy to summarize. I think I'm mostly the one that's typing in chat, so I'm happy to summarize what I've said.
oh, thank you very much. And Sammy, thank you, and go ahead and take it away.
Sure. I appreciate the space to talk. So I'm also a neighbor living in North Bennington, and a lot of the things that Kim has brought up, I'm interested in exploring. My main question is, how much study has there been to determine environmental impacts, and who conducted the studies? And I would also support, if good cell service is great, and we want people to have access to good tools for communication, that's a really great thing. But making sure that the project isn't unnecessarily destroying natural lands, in an irreversible way, and affecting our environment, which is already being affected a lot. I think that's important to look into our options before rushing a project along.
Okay, and so there was, in the presentation, it looked like the NRC maybe, or a representative from the state had looked at the wetlands and one other thing, but not the historic, which I think if it's determined not to be a wetland, the only concern would be whether there is some historic significance to the site, whether that's sociological significance or some importance to the trees that exist there.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. So we had a Vermont certified wetland delineator. His name is Christian Heens. He's with Woodland Services in Manchester, who did the delineation basically to confirm the absence of wetlands. And then there's a firm called Lucas Environmental, who's worked with a number of different carriers on a number of projects, who looked at things like wilderness areas, rare, threatened, and endangered species, critical habitat, wildlife preserves, floodplains, and basically environmental resources, and determined there's nothing there. So the reason that we have not gone fully into the Section 106 process, the historic survey process, is just because I think we wanted to get a sense of the community feedback first and still finalize some of the arrangements as far as the exact scope of the construction and the location of the access road. And so that's why that process will typically run concurrently.
Okay. And is there other questions, or can I circle back to Mr. Hall there? Okay, so if you'd like to share your screen, and you've shared this graphic with me, so I think I do think it would be useful just to, can you access a button that says share screen, or do I need to do something in order to give you that permission?
Oh no, I accessed one, so I don't know if I can share. Can anyone see that?
Yes, we can see that.
All right. So right here is an electrical power right-of-way to serve the north portion of the campus. This is the orchard area. And this is where the current tower proposal has located the tower. Right here is a deeply wooded area. The short Aldridge Trail comes around here and goes down this way to Scary Lane. And this is the alternative location that is suggested that would better serve the low-lying areas of North Bennington and be only a few hundred yards from where the tower is currently suggested. Has no residences that I'm aware of would be within 500 feet of that tower.
So I think as the moderator of the discussion, I'll basically ask that I think, again, this proposal has not been, it's not one that was reviewed by the presenters here tonight, but I will ask Bennington College or Andy to, was this area or anywhere near that area explored and ruled out for any reason, or is that something that is possible to be explored?
We did not look at any locations in that area. That stretch of forest there is topographically, it slopes down towards the west fairly dramatically. I'm not exactly where the red dot is located. I couldn't tell you what the elevation is there compared to the elevation where the tower was proposed. Yeah. But there were no locations proposed on that edge, and partly because the locations that we reviewed were the ones that were brought to us as viable tower locations from people who are telecommunications engineers. So knowing all the parameters involved in site selection, I don't know why that was not originally proposed.
I am looking at the topographical here, and I do see roughly about 35 to 40 feet difference in elevation lower at the new location than the present location, just from the numbers that I'm seeing here.
And if I can weigh on it real quickly, so I looked at, not just this area, but all over, geographically, we always try to look at different opportunities, different landowners. When I looked at the college, the more we got closer to the southern portion of the college, there's a lot of historical buildings. So for instance, a tower in this area, one's got to be taller. And because if you see to the south of that is just a wide open field, and so the tower, the college and the tower itself would be pretty visible from those historic buildings. And even if the college wanted us to do it, we do have that SHPO, state historic process, that we have to run through that flags these types of proposals for impact on historical structures. So that's why ultimately when we approached the college and we pushed it back further, because the visual impact from any historic structures in the area is minimized by the current location. And if you put it where this possible alternative location one, you can see to the east, you can see to the south, and even to the west, there's no obstructions. You're getting real visibility from those, in all directions, because there's really no terrain or development that's in the area that's going to kind of eat up the visual impact here. And that's why we ended up where we ended up. But the argument is that you probably would
actually go to the site.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, you may be right. You in that location, it's lower. You may catch some more traffic on 67A, but every time you're gaining something, you're losing something someplace else. And
but
so,
that's true. That's true.
So you would be losing coverage out of North Bennington. The college might gain a little bit more, but the college is pretty well served by the tower in the current location. So anything you're taking south is going to just pull south out of the village. And like I said, besides the fact that just this site and this location will be highly more visible from structures that have historical significance versus what we have currently.
I actually disagree. I don't think you will see it. It's a very well hidden location, and but the college should look at it. I mean, what's the disadvantage of taking a look?
Well, that's something that they could certainly consider, I think, but that's, you know, we don't have authority to make them look at it, but we can consider that in making our recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions or comments for any of the speakers? And if you could you stop your screen share so that I can
sure.
See if there's any other comment. Did any other members of the board want to weigh in on this, the presentation that's been made, or any of the questions raised, or have any? Am I correct in
John?
Yeah.
Sorry. The one question I had, I guess, is so with the tower in your proposed location, how far above the existing tree line does the tower end up, or do you not know that? Right, so the existing tree canopy is 76 feet. So we'd extend to the very tip top of the crown, right, at the top, would extend to 115. So the tower itself will go to 110, and then you'll have the crown on top. So that'll be total of basically just 29 feet above the canopy. Okay.
And keeping in mind, we are proposing a pine tree installation, so.
Yes.
Right.
Yep, right. I didn't get that. Thank you.
John, I have a few more comments, and then I will break off if you want.
Okay, well,
I'm sure we're pushing.
We're a little bit
late night.
Yeah, but I rather than, you know, postponing, why don't you, if you could briefly state
Sure, I would
to the board.
I would say first of all that the radio frequency information that we received was based on the AT&T installation, I believe. It was not based on all of the antennas that could be added as de minimis adjustments about which we would have no control, and the board would not necessarily be informed of. So beware that the initial installation gives Vertex essentially blanket authority to keep that tower up and load it up with multiple cell phone providers, antennas, and who knows what, including and up to 5G antennas, which have many issues associated with it. And I don't think that's in question. The second is we have an emergency generator on site in support of the tower. And emergency generators, to be useful, have to be tested regularly. And I would guess, certainly at hospitals, emergency generators are tested once a month, and they're run for an hour. I don't know what the testing protocol will be for this emergency generator, but it is going to generate a sizable amount of noise, one would guess, and discharge fumes.
So, Mr. Chair, can I address both of those quickly?
Sure, thank you.
Sure. So, with regard, let's do the second one first. With respect to the generator, the way that a generator works at an AT&T facility is it runs for half an hour once a week. It's always set to run during the weekdays in the middle of the day, and that's basically just a kick test to keep it warm so that it'll work.
The noise is very minimal, and we'd be able to provide a statement as part of our petition, or if the village would like to basically establish what noise levels will be, but it's going to be in compliance with the World Health Organization criteria, just basically like we've done at every other site. What I would say too is that a typical AT&T site like this one will have an 8-hour battery backup. So the generator would only come on for a prolonged period of time beyond that half an hour once a week in the event that you had more than an outage of greater than 8 hours. And that certainly can happen from time to time, but I think probably from your own experience with GMP, you would see that it's fairly rare that you would have an outage going for much longer than 8 hours at any given time. As far as the radio frequency emissions, each carrier is independently required to assess its own, to basically ensure that it's in compliance with radio frequency emissions, and that includes taking into account what's already at other facilities. But the point being that the village will get notice of any future de minimis modifications. If they go through the Public Utility Commission, then the legislative body for where the facility is located will always get those notices coming to it before a facility goes on. So if there really are concerns, those will come before the village.
Are you required to notify the property owner, or are you
We're
notifying?
required to notify the property owner, not adjoining property owner. So the college
Not
will also
adjoining.
see anytime that a new application for a co-location would come onto a particular tower.
But I would not. As an abutting neighbor, I would not.
That's correct. Absent some very substantial expansion in the tower, which I don't think we'd anticipate either under the lease or based on the existing design of the facility.
But you cannot, your indication that you provided on your chart there is, I am correct in saying it is solely for the AT&T installation initially.
That's correct. That's correct.
Not the AT&T installation for all time or for all carriers.
That's correct. The antenna facilities change, but what I will say is that since at least 2006, for every one of these sites that I think Jamil and Steve and Sohail and I have been involved with, I think I could maybe count on one hand the number where, regardless of whether it was a new co-location or a new facility, that those radio frequency emissions ever went above about 10% of the MPE. So in other words, there's no circumstance that we can envision, certainly now and not in the future, where you would come anywhere close to reaching that MPE, even on a facility with multiple carriers like this one.
Well, I want to thank you very much for your presentation and answering these questions for us tonight. And also, I did want to ask if, in reading the statute on this, I'm just curious about, it seemed like there was something in there that said that we're allowed to request that you make a presentation like this, which you're doing here. But if we have follow-up questions or we want additional information, is this like a one-shot deal where you've fulfilled your requirement so you don't need to come back to before the board, or would you come back, I mean, regardless of whether there is or there isn't, would you be willing to go on the record and say you would come back if we have follow-up questions?
Yes, why don't I answer it this way to say, yes, we are more than willing to come back if the village has follow-up questions or anyone. And moreover, we understand that these are unusual circumstances to begin with. So it seems all the more appropriate that if you would like us to come to a follow-up meeting, if you can communicate with us, I'll communicate with the team to run down some of the information that's been asked. As I said, we're in the process, especially through Steve of work and Andrew of working on getting the final design. So at a minimum, it's appropriate to get you that, to promise you that, and maybe we can convene another meeting whenever the village
And when would the trustees realistically want to have us come for a follow-up?
So we have meetings the first Tuesday following the first Wednesday.
Okay.
They're actually, and conveniently, I have the town report in front of me, which has all the dates for 2020, and then on page 27, is it, Lori? Let's see. 27. Yes, so June is going to be June 9th, and July is July 7th. And, you know, I would imagine it would be one of those two, given your time frame with your 60 days. So I would appreciate that. And if we have something specific that we'd like to have explored, we'll obviously try to get you that information ahead of time.
Very good.
One question, John. When does at any time the DRB get involved with this?
So I think that they're in a similar situation to us, which is they can submit a recommendation, or as you said, a non-recommendation or a recommendation with condition. But that they would need to request a meeting as well. It's not a matter of course, and the project doesn't need to go through a DRB process.
And that's because of the PUD zoning at the college?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So the planned unit development or whatever at the education, whatever the zoning is for the college, so are they exempt from any review from the actual governing body of development and review?
It's written into the statute in 248A. It's written right in there that says that the local zoning ordinances do not apply if you're using this specific process. It's a state.
Right. State federal. Yep.
For lack of a better word, it's federalism essentially.
Yeah.
But the one difference that I would just say, just in defense of the statute is, and part of the reason that we like it is that you still can have input based on the zoning ordinance and the town plan or the village plan. But what's different about it is it means that, for instance, as you say, the town doesn't need to, or the college doesn't need to go and amend its PUD in order to allow the facility, assuming a CPG is granted.
Right. So if there are elements of the PUD that don't specifically refer to your proposal, that doesn't matter?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Good. Thank you.
That's a great question.
All right, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate that. And so the board does have other business to attend to on this meeting, but anybody that was here from the presentation, we appreciate your time and thank you for being here. You're more than welcome to stay, but I know it's
that's okay. We will likely see you in June. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Okay, guys, I'm really sorry for the length, but we'll just take care of the regular items of business as quickly as I can. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes from April 7th, that our last Zoom meeting? Is there any objection to approval by unanimous consent of the minutes? Hearing no objection, the minutes will be approved.
With one abstention. I was not there.
Okay, with one abstention. We'll review the monthly warrant and approve the payment of the bills. I thought I had those teed up here, but maybe I don't.
I apologize if I missed something, but what part of the meeting are we in?
So we're in the regular village trustees meeting now. The annual meeting has concluded, and that was the first order. So I took, sorry, I'll stop. Let me look at that screen. I took the Bennington College cell tower proposal under item number 10 first, just so that, because most people were on the call for that issue.
I see.
And so we've dispensed with 10A, and now I'm going back to number 1 on the agenda when we just approved the minutes, and now we're on number 2, the monthly warrant and payment of the bills.
Gotcha. So this part of the call is still for Bennington residents.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
We would not, I mean, if we went into executive session for which we may have to at the very end, but I'd let everybody know. But this is still public open meeting at this point.
I appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, so did the trustees have a chance to review the warrant? Yes. Any objection to approval of the warrant in the amount listed? Mary, do you have the number in front of you for us?
Yes, the payroll warrant, and there's nothing unusual about it at all. $6,961.23.
Okay.
And that covers the normal AFLAC withholding from the prior month, our 2 highway guys, and then for the 4 weeks of this month, and then the normal monthly for myself and Lori. Nothing else. There was no part-timers, no temps, or whatever. 6961.23.
Okay. And any objection?
Motion to approve?
Hearing none, it'll be approved unanimously. I don't have any objection to that one. How about payment of the bills?
The total of the warrant there is $16,968.28. And when I sent this, I had noted a couple of things that might be a little bit different or unusual, including 4 checks that were actually from last month, but the invoices did not come in until the day of or the day after the meeting. So those checks were done a day or 2 after the meeting. I believe I also noted that there was about $400 for Chris Damon for a laptop that he needed for that, but that is now village property. The big one was $2,500 for up and running, and that was in addition to the free Wi-Fi. This actually extended the Wi-Fi all the way out to the skate park and the ball field. My question here is, was there it ended up getting coded into parks because, I guess because it's covering the park. Is that where you want it, or do you want it elsewhere? So that was my question there. And then let me see, I think, oh, and then there was only one other unusual.
I see that smile, Matt.
I mean,
it really doesn't matter in a way, because whether it's parks or whether it goes into under, office something, it's all the same line when it comes to a person's tax bill. But it makes a difference when you're looking at your own specific line item that you look at.
I mean, I could go either way on that because on one hand, I think it clearly is going to be used mostly by people in the park because people aren't in normal times, people aren't as much parking at the depot to use it, but people are using Lions Park all the time, and now they're going to be able to be on their phones all the time when they're at the park. So that's.
And it does not significantly, if you looked at the annual estimate that I did, it doesn't really significantly affect the total of what was appropriated in total for the park.
But I don't think we have a specific line item for like information technology.
No, we don't.
Or it should. So I could go either way with that.
Yeah.
Well, to me, wouldn't that be part of infrastructure?
We don't have a line for that.
Roads? This is definitely a roads thing, right, Mark?
It should be because it's kind of, it's a technology road, so. No, I'm fine, that's fine.
It could be depot, you know, it's at the depot, it's enhancing the depot.
It could be either one, but ultimately it's gonna come out of the same pocket for the taxpayer.
I get
So,
that, I get
Take
that.
a look at, just take a look at, when you guys get a chance, take a look at the document there that I sent you, which was an estimate of what the year end would be. And I had notes A through G, I think, on that one. Take a look at that. If you decide you want it elsewhere, just let me know.
Mary, just in honor of Mr. Boudreaux's great service to this community and his fight at every turn to sustain his budget for the parks, which he has cared for with great dedication. I really think that shouldn't go in the parks. And
consider it done. It'll be moved.
Thank you.
Okay.
And because Norm's not here, put it on something Norm has to pay for.
Exactly.
Because he's always
the last thing that was unusual before you vote on the $16,968 is the annual $500 fee for the stormwater application. That did not go to parks.
Okay, is there any objection to approval of the payment of the bills? Hearing none, that'll pass unanimously. Are there any further citizen comments? That's item 3 on our agenda. I will note just on, because we are being taped, but I'm not sure if that includes the chat window. I don't think it does. Let's see.
I believe Zoom calls do include the chat window, but I could be wrong.
Okay. There was definitely concern about the environmental impact in a number of questions of the cell tower, and that is it located on a glacial till? Is it some other concerns? And again, they have done what they thought they needed to do. If there's some alternative that's going to be proposed, somebody can try to counter what they've presented, including us if we felt it was necessary. But we'll note the priorities of the residents who are here tonight because they took the time to be at the meeting. Anything else on the treasurer's side, Mary?
No, just take a look at that other report, those other reports that I got to you, and I'll have plenty more notes for you all before we get to the end of the year, because there'll be a couple other decisions that you'll have to make. Thank you.
So in the highway report, Zaluzny has started construction. I'm sure everyone is aware of that, given that there's been road closures, but so they're working on Mechanic Street, Madison Road, and College Road, and then they're going to be moving to River Street. They should be, I'm told, done with the upper sections by next Wednesday or Thursday. So there is going to be some road closure tomorrow and Friday, as well as the early part of next week, but that's going to get it done essentially. Then the connections will be made at that point and tested, so they won't need to do anything except for clean up after that. I know that's an inconvenience, but I've tried to actually approve the road closures as much as I can because that means it's less time that they're there. If anybody has any issues with that, please let me know, because we are required to put them on notice for any problems that we have. So, Norm and I have been discussing basically on a daily basis a number of different little things that have been going on with that project. We have put in a water stub for the town garage, at 56 Mechanic Street at a 6-inch diameter, which is like an extra large diameter because we have, Norm has made a proposal to put a sprinkler system in the garage, especially if we ever do an addition. We want to have the capacity to do that. So all it is a stub, and we're just gonna have regular service there. But if we did need a sprinkler system at some point in the future, we have that ability. Yeah. Yes, Mary.
I think those rounds of grants, which I didn't take a long look at, but there are a couple of them that deal with fire and safety. And I wonder if a sprinkler system couldn't apply there. And if not there, at least a small part will probably come from our passive. We've gotten two grants from them so far. So we should just keep that in mind. Look for a little free money.
I think that the Development Review Board meeting was postponed, and has it been rescheduled at this point, Tara, or no? Oh, are you on mute?
Fine. It hasn't been rescheduled. I think that we were waiting for clearance from the world to open things up again.
Guys,
but we could do a Zoom call. I don't know if Chris is savvy enough, but now he has a computer, so maybe that'll work. But we haven't warned for anything. We canceled the one in April, and nothing further has come of it.
Well, the water board is proceeding with meetings, and they're trying to do them with social distancing. So that's something to consider. I don't want to propose doing that for the trustees, but if you think that it's possible to have a small board with appropriate distances, either in an outside location might be nice, or you could do, or the depot and the other half of the depot, you could potentially do it that way. So.
Well, we could do it on my lawn. I've got lots of space and chairs.
Why not? I think you should think outside the box, but
okay.
Is there, I know there's a proposal for a bakery. Is the owner antsy to get that going, or is it not really, is it in a development stage and not really a function stage at this point?
I haven't spoken to her. She hasn't contacted me directly. Technically, I'm the vice chair. Jim Sullivan is supposed to be the chair of our board.
Right.
And we're still looking for one more person to join. I think we picked up Pauline Healy, but that was the other thing. Yeah, Pauline Healy said she's interested, and perhaps we can appoint her to join the board.
And do we want to do that now?
Maybe.
Well, up to you. Go ahead and make a motion if you want to do it.
Does she automatically?
Really late, so.
Yeah, I know. Save it for another day. Let me just confirm that she wants it. But let me correspond with Chris Damon and see if Amy Buckley, or there was another item that was on the April meeting, but I can't remember right now what it was for.
I'm sure that Jim has got that in hand, but you just, it's my understanding that if somebody applies for a permit and then it's not, if the board doesn't act on it, then they can just go ahead and do it.
Oh, really? I'll contact Chris and find out whether we can reschedule for next month, or how early we can reschedule, I guess. Because we found out about the April meeting in February, and I'm not sure why we didn't meet in March, although it was before everything was shut down. So there might be like a time lag required by the DRB when we put out warnings, like a month's warning or something. I'll talk to Chris.
Okay. And as far as the Planning Commission, I don't think there's a report on that, other than the trustees might want to suggest that the Planning Commission take a look at telecommunication siting as something to put in there, so that we can have, when they're reviewing projects in North Bennington, that they have something to look at. fire department. I'll just note, I did speak to the chief about telecommunications and whether that was an issue for him, and he said that they don't use that type of system. They have their own, I don't think it's called a repeater, it's something else, but they use this internal system, so they call each other on their cell phones, but that's not the technology that they use with the trucks and stuff. So it doesn't make any difference either way to him, whether there's a tower or not. The water department, I went over the Zaluzny project, which is their main thing. The fountain at Lincoln Square has been uncovered, and we're going to test that probably tomorrow or Friday. I just wanted to remind everybody. Nope, Joe, in there, in the bathroom, buddy. Right there. No, not there. Not there. Not there. Right over here. Ow. He almost peed on my bed. So just wanted to remind everybody to make sure to do the census. And we talked about the kiosk already. I'll take a look at that kiosk as well over at Joe's. 40 Main Street is looking much better. That is basically a derelict property, but is in the process of foreclosure, and they are acting on keeping the landscaping and stuff like that, so that's good. But hopefully we can get the foreclosure done so that it goes into private hands again. So there's only, unless there's another order of business that somebody else wants to raise, I just need about 5 minutes in executive session for a legal issue. We've received a letter from an attorney that's unrelated to any of the other. So just,
John,
yeah.
do we want to talk about Lions Park, or is that?
So yeah, okay. So there's two on Lions Park. I sent out 2 emails today that had 2 different sort of perspectives on them. One was that before I had reached out to the town of Bennington, I had proposed that we reopen the park on a limited basis and just post some signs that say, exercise care and follow the Department of Health recommendations for social distancing. And but then I looked at Bennington's plan, and their play structures in Bennington at the rec center and Willow Park are not open. The parks are open for use. The open areas are open, and the field areas, but not the play structures. And I do have a little bit of concern about Lions Park, because kind of the focal point of Lions Park are the play structures and the skate areas, which are, if you're skating on it, that's one thing, but a lot of times you're just sitting on it, or, just touching it in different ways. So falling down on it, I guess, is what I used to do more of when I was skateboarding. But so are there any comments about, which way you'd like to go with that?
I heard the skate park in Manchester has opened, but I don't know about the playground area. I've gotten one person asking me a lot about the skate park.
What do you think?
I think it's tough because a park like that, given its size, basically if you're going there to hang out.
Yeah.
So I would find it almost impossible to enforce any kind of social distancing. So I think it's a tough call. I tend to err on the side of caution. So if you allow people to walk through the area, that's one thing. But I would say you would want to close the swing sets, close the slides, all the play structures. I mean, basketball, it's a shame, but if you're playing with more than two people, you're very close to each other. And even the skate park, same thing. So
And touching the same ball too, so.
yeah, so I as tough as it is, it's just, I mean, I think if it's something that we can't police and patrol and enforce any kind of common sense, for the lack of a better word, I just think it would be a mistake to open up those type structures. Now, Welling Field, which is an open field and you do things in the open, down by the Henry Bridge, McWaters Park, I mean, those are just open areas that are just for, you know, walking your dogs. It doesn't promote standing still and congregating like a playground does. Just my opinion.
So maybe we'll table that until the next meeting, or if there is going to be another amendment to the executive order, we can see what that says. And we could act on that, but we'll keep it as is for now. Any objection? Okay.
I don't have a strong enough objection to, I'm sort of on the fence about it all, so. It'd be great to open them to in some way, but I totally agree with Mark too, that.
Well, I actually didn't get the approval of the board to close it in the first place. So as long as you're all okay with it, as chair, I think, you know, if the executive order does change at all, then I can just email you and we can move to a limited use plan, you know, in a week or two, if it seems like that's appropriate. But I just thought I'd bring it up since we're here. Okay. Was there one other, or was that your comment too, Mark?
No, I'll make this very quick and I can take care of it. There's two things related to parks. One is with Lions Park. The Lions Club wants to do some work on the bleachers and possibly painting the skate structures. But I think that would kind of fall under no municipal projects other than outdoor, well, it's an outdoor maintenance. I can follow up with that. My opinion is we support it. I'll look into it. And once it's appropriate to do so, we would love to support that effort. The other is the garden group. I can't remember the exact name of the group, but for McWaters Park wants to build a permanent type step structure, kind of where their kiosk is that leads down in the park, to promote that to be the access point to it. They've got a quote from a builder who was willing to do it, and they're looking for $1,000. I think it was $2,500 was the total. They were hoping that Park and Rec could support it with $1,000. I think they're doing a wonderful job down there. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But again, I state my opinion and put it out to the board. If you find that that is a worthy project, which I do, I can follow up with that as well.
Yeah, I don't see any objection to that item.
And it would be, what I would do is ask for a clear plan on, you know, size, dimension, material, all that stuff. But in terms of supporting it with some money, as long as the plan itself is approved, then I would give them, and we can give them the approval that we would support upon approval of the plan, monetary support of $1,000.
Yes.
From the parks, right?
No, we'll take it out of Norm too. Yes, from the parks.
You can take it out of the mowing project down there or something. Yeah. Mark, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for everything, Mark. And thanks for sticking around till we figure out what's next.
Oh yeah, no, my pleasure. I enjoy it.
All right. So I would ask there be a motion to enter executive session. And the reason for doing an executive session is, again, that we have to discuss a legal issue that we've received a letter from an attorney that can't be disclosed to the public at this time, but will be at a later date.
I'll make that motion.
So moved, and is there a second? Mr. Patterson seconded first, I think, so we'll go with him. And so we're gonna enter executive session now, so all members of the general public, if you could sign off, that would be great. And we're just gonna